Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another in a series of webinars designed for airports and the aviation community. I'm Terry Bills, and I'm the Transportation Industry Manager here at Esri, and today I'm joined by David James and Michael Beavers, both from our aviation sales team. In addition, we have Mitchell Otteson from CityWorks as well. So today's webinar is focused on how a configuration of ArcGIS can help airports conduct and document their daily airfield inspections and ultimately to meet their Part 139 daily inspection requirements. This is a critical piece of airport safety. So we're actually quite excited to show this off and the ability really to standardize the complete workflow for daily inspections, the ability to generate work orders, and to create the necessary documentation to meet the FAA requirements. Before we begin, I'd like to point out that we are recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box, and we'll try to answer as many as time allows at the end of the webinar. So both this webinar, the recording of this webinar, as well as the slides that you see as part of today's webinar will be available. The recording will be up on the transportation website, and the slides will be in the GeoNet group, ArcGIS for Aviation. All right, so with that, let me start. I'm sure that most of you on the call today are familiar with the FAA's Part 139 requirements. These are very similar to other international, both ICAO and Eurocontrol requirements for airport self-inspections. The airport self-inspection process is required under subpart D, or the operations component of the guidelines of Part 139, and they're specifically called out in section 139.327. And what this really requires is that every airport, every Part 139 airport has to demonstrate that they've adopted both procedures and associated equipment to conduct inspections, to rapidly disseminate that information. They need to be able to demonstrate that they've have qualified personnel to do the inspections, and that those personnel have been trained, and a reporting system to ensure prompt correction. So in other words, the ability to generate work orders and the ability to document completed work. And then finally, that to maintain those inspection records and the corrective actions for a 12-month period. And then finally, there is really a checklist, and we'll actually see that. So some of the areas on the checklist, obviously paved and unpaved areas, safety areas, markings, signs, lighting, nav aids, including wildlife sightings and other elements. And those really are spelled out in the advisory circular and that you can see there. And that really gives guidance to airports in terms of how to conduct their safety inspections. And then finally, each airport needs to prepare their airport certification manual, which really sort of lays out the entirety of the airport's safety-focused procedures. And we've put an example from Salt Lake City there in the slide. Historically, many airports have used paper processes to document these inspections, and they really had difficulty turning those paper records into the type of documentation required for FAA certification. And another issue really revolved around how to turn an issue found on the airfield into a work order in a timely manner. So what we're going to show you today is actually that complete workflow of your daily airfield inspection process. And that includes whether you're whether you're linking to an existing work order management system, as we're going to show you today with CityWorks, or lacking that, you also could use Esri's Workforce to achieve the same end. Before we launch the demo, let me pass it over to David James, and he's going to give more of an overview of the Part 139 application. So David, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, well, thank you to all of the attendees for making time to attend today's webinar. We're really pleased to be able to showcase Esri's Airfield Inspection solution. It's been created to help airports fulfill their FAA safety obligations and also improve operational efficiencies. Next slide, please, Mike. Here's a quick overview of our agenda. There's going to be quite an extensive demo, including a demo, an interactive demo showing the integration between the Esri solution and CityWorks. This whole session is probably going to last about 40 minutes. Next slide, please, Mike. Okay, the Part 139 airfield inspection process is probably the #1 topic of discussion when we meet with airport. It always appears to be the one operations responsibility that keeps airport executives up at night. Our solution has really been designed to deliver on these 3 key business benefits. It's totally aligned with the FAA airfield inspections requirements. It uses a very map-centric, easy-to-use mobile inspection app, and we provide automation and integration between the airfield inspections and the maintenance workflows. Next slide, please, Mike. The Esri solution has been assembled using the FAA Advisory Circular 150/5200-18C. The solution is designed to support multiple inspections beyond just the daily airfield inspections. Some examples of those are wild activity inspections, vehicle inspections, periodic inspections, and many others. The solution really consists of 3 components: a mobile app for use by the airfield inspectors, a management dashboard to provide insights around key performance indicators, and also the asset management systems integration. Okay, Mike, next slide. The heart of the solution is the mobile inspection app. It's based on Esri's commercial product known as Survey 123, which we've configured, not customized, to support these specific airfield inspection requirements. The app is available for use on a laptop, a tablet, or mobile phone form factor. It operates in a Windows, iOS, or Android operating system. It's secure, and it's easy to configure to personalize it to meet each airport's specific requirements. Next slide, Mike. The FAA Advisory Circular emphasizes the importance of integrating inspection and maintenance workflows. This Esri solution uses webhook integration techniques to integrate with leading asset management work order systems such as CityWorks, Maximo, Infor, and others. Today's demo will show our integration with CityWorks. Next slide, Mike. The Esri Airfield Inspection solution is built on Esri's industry-leading ArcGIS platform. ArcGIS is an enterprise-class technology platform that is scalable, can be implemented on-premise or in the cloud. It's a high-performance, secure platform that supports open integration standards with business and operations systems. We regard ArcGIS as the ERP for airport operations. Okay, Mike, next slide. Okay, this diagram provides an overview of the workflow that Mike and Mitch are going to work through in the demo. It's a sort of fairly typical high-level workflow, and I think most of you will be able to relate to it. Okay, Mike, next slide. Okay, and Mike, over to you now for the demonstration.
All right, good. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very, very much, everyone. Again, I'm going to spend a little bit and I'm going to talk about a series of applications that make up this airfield inspection solution. So before I get started showing you that, I just want you to understand that regardless of the applications that you have that meet specific business needs at your airport or your aviation authority, it's important to have those applications accessible quickly and easily. And what I would recommend would be having a website internally where you could share that information with your constituents and anyone else at the airport who has interest in and a need to use these solutions. And what you're looking at here is a website that I built through Hub that contains a series of apps, including the airfield inspections solution. So if I'm any of the people that I'm going to play a role for during this demonstration, I would simply log into this website and then I could click this link and then it would open up that set of solutions. So I'm going to play 3 separate roles today when I show you this demonstration. And the first would be that of an airside operations manager or an airport manager who wants quick, secure, web-based access to the status of all these airfield inspections that are going on across the airport in real time. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be accessing this configurable off-the-shelf dashboard that is secure, and then I'm going to be able to see these inspections as they're occurring and see history as well. So imagine me being the airside operations manager. Now I'm at home, or I'm in my office, I'm on the website, or I'm using a tablet as David suggested. And I'm going to simply open up this link and then I'm going to be able to see, using this interactive viewer, the location of these individual inspections in a map. So you can see these are broken down based on their part, 139 fueling, lighting, markings. And then as I zoom in to this map, you're going to notice things like this airfield diagram, which helps give a better operational understanding of the location of these issues that have been reported. And then as I zoom in further, what you'll notice is a very high resolution image is going to render. And that imagery comes from a business partner of ours, and that's Nearmap. So what you can do is I'll share access to this dashboard with you. If you want information on how to integrate very high resolution imagery from Nearmap, you just simply click the image and then you can see when the date was flown, which was very recently, and you can click here to learn more about their imagery as well. So I'll just zoom in and I'll show you the high level of detail that you can see. And as it renders, what you'll notice is this imagery is very, very high resolution. So you as the airfield manager could then use this for a real quick understanding of the operations that are going on and the inspections that have been observed. I'm going to zoom back out now and I'll show you a little bit more functionality that's part of this. So if I wanted to see just the inspections that occurred today, I could then filter those out simply by tapping on this widget. Now it's also configurable. So if I didn't want to see just those that were today or yesterday, I could configure this to be any time. So it looks like all the inspections that are on here that are open were either today or yesterday. There were no open inspections that happened last week. Likewise, if I wanted to see any issues that have not been resolved, then I could easily filter those out, or those maybe that have been resolved. So let's look at all the issues, and we can see there's 10 across the airport. And then based on their priority, it looks like there's 2 that are urgent, and then I can also see a list of those. Looks like there's 4 that have high urgency, and then 3 that are routine. So we'll just have a look at any of these that are routine, and it looks like, let's have a look at this one. So if I wanted more details about it, then I could simply click that in the list, and I could see that this person inspected it. There was the problem. The issue was resolved, and there's a photograph that that individual took as well, and they also highlighted the area where that issue occurred. It looked like that light was out, but it was replaced. So the beauty of this tool is it's quick to configure, it's simple to use, it's really off the shelf, and it is secure. So the next role I'm going to play is I'm going to be the inspector performing an inspection now. So what I'd like to do is then, I'm in my truck. Now I'm out on the airfield. Now the inspectors that have been talking to us before about some of the challenges they had, the first was, number one, they didn't have a quick way to record the information about these observations they were making in a digital form so that then it could be integrated into a larger enterprise database. The second challenge they had was that they didn't have the ability to see existing issues that had already been reported. So what I did and what we did is develop a series of tools that link together in one URL, which I could then access through a tablet or through my web browser or a mobile device like a phone if I wanted to. And when I'm out there on the airfield, I could then see these individual issues that occurred. And if I wanted more details on them like that one I saw earlier, I could easily do that just by tapping on it. What I'm going to do now is, as the inspector, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start an inspection. So on the left-hand side, David mentioned it earlier, there's Survey 123, and this form was built around that Part 139 expectation by the FA-18C. So I configured this so that it looks exactly like, and it collects information that's directly integrated into the Part 139 FA format. So the date and time would be the first thing that I tap on. Of course, it's read from my device, or I could configure that and set it up anytime I wanted. Now I've set these up to either have daily inspections, periodic, or special inspections. And we'll go through a daily first. And the drop downs, remember, are very easy to configure. So if I don't select it, it throws an error. So it doesn't let me make those errors. So the simplest thing that if I saw any issues, FOD, for example, I could just simply click it. I'm not going to see FOD on this one. I'm going to do an issue from these different groups. And remember, we've got these drop downs that are all part of the Part 139. This is Part 139.311 lighting. So again, if I don't select it, then it throws the error. And then what issue type? Now in this case, what I'm going to see is I see a damaged light. And I see that on the runway. Now, once I select runway, I've only got these lists of runways that are available at the Tampa airport. Now at your airport, you would configure these to only have the airport runways that are on your airdrome. Now with my mobile device or my tablet, I would either get out of the truck and I could take a picture, or I could just simply take that picture from inside my truck. But in this case, it looks like there's at least one broken light. It looks like two here. So I'm going to take a picture of those, and I'm even be able to mark those up so that an inspector later on could see where those are. So I'll just use this markup tool and I'll indicate that these lights were actually broken. I could take another picture if I wanted to. Now this is, I would call this a high urgent issue. So I'm going to select high. Now I could set urgent to the priority to urgent, and that could be configured to send an email to the maintenance supervisor regardless of the time of day, and then they would receive that notification saying that an urgent issue has just been observed, and they could take immediate action. In this case, because there's 3 lights that are out, it does require a NOTAM. So I'll say yes on the NOTAM. And then I'll enter in that NOTAM, and those NOTAMs are smart numbers, meaning it has the month, the day, the year, and then the NOTAM number. And what I can do then is then connect in this form directly to my NOTAM system manager. So I would click the link and it would take me here. I would log in securely and then create that NOTAM on the fly, making this a much more efficient workflow. And I can't fix this light myself as the inspector, so it does require a service request. And that's going to be important in a minute because we're going to be able to link this issue directly to the CityWorks asset management system because I've selected that service request. And I'm also not able to resolve that issue. And I'm going to zoom in on the map to where I notice this broken light. I could also use the GPS on my device to take me there directly, or if it's in a place where I can't access it, then I could just navigate through the map. But I'm just going to click on that area where the light is broken. Now remember, this is a one-to-many situation because I could have one issue with many observations. So I could say one light is broken here, and then I could generate another issue in the same form during the same observation. Then I'll just simply enter in the comments, the runway end light is broken. And again, I could include another observation here if I wanted to. So I could have as many observations as I'd like. Now, the FAA doesn't take your word for the fact that you've inspected these things. It's essential that through the form you could prove that you've actually inspected these areas. So I've gone through and I've pre-selected, just for the sake of saving time, that these runways have been inspected. And you can see runway 1 right, 9 left is actually unsatisfactory, and that came from that previous selection. So that information pre-populates here on the form. So I'll go back, and then if I had to, I'd fill out the rest of these. But again, it's required for me as the inspector to physically select these anytime I do my observations. And then I'd write my comments: runway edge light lenses are broken, service request is needed. And then I'd note the end time, and then I would submit. Now, once I've submitted that issue, then what you're going to notice is it's actually going to be recorded inside a database. So let's do that now. Now that it's been submitted, what I can do is then go through and then link that to my asset management system. What I'd like to do now is stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to pass it over to Mitch, who's going to be taking over for the CityWorks asset management portion.
Thanks, Mike. Let me choose the correct screen here.
All right.
You've got it.
Looks like it is on the right screen. I didn't choose the right one the first time. So as Mike submitted that daily inspection survey 123 survey, and through that webhook technology that was talked about earlier, it hit our API in CityWorks and created this service request here. We're looking at the service request. We got a green pin on the location of the runway here on our right side map, and the attachment even carried over with that picture of the issue. And what's nice about CityWorks is how configurable it is. So now I'm going to take the persona of a group at the airport who kind of monitors all the work activities that go on. And we have this category custom field here, which is something that's not out of the box, but configurable based on the needs of your organization, telling me what type of work order needs to be created for this issue. And in this case, it's telling me that it's a lighting work order template. Now, this work order has already been created. I have this icon here telling me that there is one related work order to this service request. And let's go ahead and take a look at it. And right now, the screen changed a little bit. This is a work order screen. The fields are a little different. And one of the main parts of a work order is its tasks, its task to complete. So the work control group at the airport created this work order, and now I'm taking on the persona of a maintenance person, and this work order has been assigned to me. And I'll go, I see the location, that green pin is at the same location that its related service request was. These icons on the map here are for service requests, but if I open up my legend, I can put them out and then show the location of work orders that are in the area. This work order icon is the work order we're looking at right now. And I am going to look at these work order tasks. or basically steps in completing the work order. And once I've finished all my work and I fixed that airfield light, it's up to me to indicate that this work has been done, and it will go back to the airfield operations team to revisit that light to make sure that it is correctly fixed. So I have this work order task here named Part 139 Work Complete. I'll go ahead and select this task and change its status here to complete. And when I do that, a new work order task is automatically going to appear for the Part 139 re-inspection. And at this point, the baton gets passed back over to the airfield operations group to do that re-inspection. So we are actually going to pass it back over to Mike.
All right. Just please verify you can still see my screen.
Yep, we're good, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate that. Okay, so now I'm back in the role of the airside operations manager or the airport manager. And remember, I submitted that survey through the form, and then it feeds that information back to this dashboard. So as the inspector, I submitted it. Mitch generated the work order, and now the airfield manager again sees this report, this issue in real time as well. So there it was when I filled it out, and you can see detailed information about it. So what I want to do now is share my tablet, and I'm going to play the role of the person who's going to go out and then re-inspect this issue that was reported, so that I can just clear it from the books and verify that it actually has been resolved. So I'm now on my tablet, I'm back in the field, and you can see me moving around, and I'm gonna get an email from Mitch that is generated automatically through CityWorks, which includes that issue number. So using that email, then I could navigate directly to that issue, which was in this case, this series of lights that were broken. So all I'm going to do during my re-inspection is simply tap on the map, and the information about that feature, including all the things that were previously recorded and put into CityWorks, shows up in this table as well. And I can add additional comments here if I like, which I will. And then once that's done, then I'll just put that the issue's been resolved and then submit it. So the re-inspection is really one of the simplest parts of that workflow. And remember, all this then is recorded in a database, which you can retain and share across your enterprise. Also, you can share that information with the FAA for regular audits, annual audits, and no-notice auditing. So what airports have found is that these tools that are part of the solution make the process of auditing much more seamless and worry-free. Let's go now, because we've done all this with airfield inspections. There's also another requirement that airports have to conduct regular wildlife observations. And at Tampa International, like many other airports, wildlife is a big problem. And as a pilot, I have actually hit birds in flight, and it's a very concerning situation. Likewise, on the airdrome, there's the impact that wildlife had. So there's got to be some mitigation tools that are required. So what I did was I understood the wildlife observation necessity that's part of the FAA requirements. And then as a variation on the daily airfield inspection theme, I did the same thing for wildlife inspection. So on my left-hand side now, I'm a biologist, or maybe an airfield inspector who has secure access to this web browser. I could use this on my mobile device or tablet, and I'm just going to go out and conduct a wildlife observation. So again, the date and time comes from my device. If it's a bird strike, I could click here and then go directly to the FAA's bird strike database and report that. Then I could locate all across the field where this wildlife bird strike actually occurred. But in this case, it's not a bird strike. I just sighted some wildlife. So I could go in and enter in the temperature. The drop downs, again, are required, so you don't miss any of that. Put in the wind direction and speed. It was on the airport operations area. It was on the ramp, and I sighted a possum. And it was just loafing. So I could go take a picture of that possum and then submit it into my database. Now, once it's in the database, it records that information, and it also tags that information along with the wildlife observation grid. So in the dashboard then, if I wanted to say submit another, I could. So in the dashboard then, you could see that that information shows up, and if I wanted information about it, then I could simply tap on that, and it would show information about that specific sighting. So likewise, I could look at the individual sightings by category and then see detailed photographs of those things. So it's very, very simple, very much like the Airfield inspection app, and it's also FAA compliant. All right, that concludes my portion of the demonstration. I'm going to pass it now back to David.
Hey, Mike, Mitch, really great demo. Thank you. And hopefully for the attendees, they can see that these applications from Esri are very configurable. And one of the benefits is, there's sort of continuity from using one app to the next app. Not a whole lot of training is required. Hey, Mike, could you show the slides again? Thank you. Just go to the next one if you would. So as a very quick recap, these solutions deliver three very important benefits. They're aligned with FAA Airfield inspection requirements. Hopefully you agree, the key part of the solution is the mobile app. It's very easy to use, very intuitive with the map and form interface. And the dashboards are also very effective in providing managers and other stakeholders with good visibility of activities related to inspections on the airfield. And then finally, we've automated the interaction between the Esri solution and, in this case, CityWorks, to allow maintenance workers to close the loop and fix the discrepancies that were identified on the airfield. So how do you get started? So Mike, go to the next slide, if you would, please. So we provide a complete turnkey solution. All the required Esri software. It can actually be, if you're not an existing Esri customer with an enterprise ArcGIS enterprise environment, this could operate out of the ArcGIS Online environment. We provide jumpstart implementation services, training and knowledge transfer, so you can support these apps yourself. And with the optional asset management, work order management integration. Terry mentioned this earlier. If you're an airport that doesn't already have an asset management or work order management system, there is the option of using Esri's workforce solution as part of this overall solution as well. And if you want any more information, please contact me at djames@esri.com. Okay, Terry, we've sort of reached the end. If you want to take it from here, that would be great.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, guys. Really great job and really impressive solution. We'll open it up for questions. And so, as we mentioned before, go ahead and type your questions into the question box, and we'll take this time. We'll start off. First question really has to do with, can you use this in disconnected mode if you happen to hit a dead spot on the airfield?
Yep.
So,
Yes,
Mike, you want to?
You go for it, Mike.
Yeah. Sure, I'd be glad to. Yeah, the solution is built around the premise that you can operate without connection to the internet or with it. So yes, you can operate it in a disconnected environment.
Okay. Another question having to do with could the airfield inspection form, could the map move along with the inspector so that the map that the inspector is actually seeing on his tablet is his current location.
Yeah, you could, with a different app that's built in, you could configure an app that would show you your location in real time. But the solution that I have built out and the one that I showed you doesn't automatically track you. We do have tracking technology that you can include if that was important for you as a supervisor of those people, to be able to track and then see that individual inspector in real time in their location. Yes, that can be configured.
Right. That would actually just be a way to further document that, in fact, the full inspection took place.
That's true.
Yeah. So there's a couple of questions really having to do with how is the service request tied to the actual asset? So in other words, let's say that I'm an airport that has all of my assets actually in a geodatabase, and is it possible that I can actually tie it to that specific asset in the database?
Yeah, you absolutely can. Yeah, because that asset has a unique identifier. Probably it could either be through a barcode or just an asset tag, or simply the fact that that asset is located at that specific spot on the airfield, and it's in your GIS. It is already unique. So yes, you can associate that inspection and that issue with existing assets. Absolutely.
Hey, Terry, but there's also, because we had this discussion with a number of airports, there's also the need to report discrepancies that are not related to assets. So for instance, FOD, you want to be able to report FOD, its location and whatever it is, and it's clearly not an asset. So the solution has the flexibility to either identify specific assets or things that are not assets, but still
like bird stripes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Okay. Let's see. There's another one. What are the advantages of using Survey 123 versus another mobile application?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we not really debated, but looked at some of our other technology in the stack. And what I think the first advantage of Survey 123 was, when we decided to use this tool, was number one, it's very easy to configure. It's web-based, or it can be accessed through a mobile device. And it's a form, so it's form-centric. So if you were to use another app, say like Collector, and you were to give that to an inspector who may not be accustomed to a map-centric method, then they had more challenges with that Collector approach versus the survey approach. And the beauty of the Survey 123 app is that I can configure it to look and feel nearly exactly like the piece of paper that a lot of airports have been or maybe are still using to do their airfield inspections. So that's one of the other advantages. The transition from a linear or an analog-based method to this enterprise connected method is much easier. The learning curve is much shallower for an inspector. So we're not asking them to gain a whole lot of new skills in order to go out and continue to do their job. So there was less resistance from any of the inspectors who have been doing their work, and with this philosophy that, well, I've been doing it this way for a long time, why should I change? Well, it's enterprise connected, it's digital, it's in a database that you can share with others, as well as the FAA, and then it's accessible to the FAA for auditing. So that's kind of the long answer for why I think Survey 123 is the recommended tool for that solution.
Okay, thanks. And Mike, maybe you wanted to, what are the Esri licenses? What's the software that's really involved in this workflow that you demonstrated?
Good. Well, I showed everything through ArcGIS Online. So if you have ArcGIS Online within your organization, then you have access to all these tools. There's another method, which could be through your enterprise, which would include your portal. So if you had all your GIS was deployed on site behind a firewall, it could also work in that environment as well.
Yeah, and again, all you would need, Terry, are user type called field workers for using the mobile app Survey 123, and then viewer user types for anyone that wants to view the dashboard.
Okay, let's see, there's another question really having to do with the reporting. And so how is reporting handled, the integration of the NOTAMs, the wildlife, et cetera, and ties to the work order components. And so the statement is that the FAA needs to see the connectivity between the discrepancies and the work to mitigate them. So how is that handled?
That's a great question. In fact, to me, that's the real underlying value of this solution, is that the apps do one thing. They capture that information in an enterprise geodatabase that's compliant with Part 139. And it also is able to be integrated into your ArcGIS GIS database, and vice versa. That ArcGIS data then can be fed into the applications as part of this airfield inspection solution. So the key is this: both the airfield inspections and the wildlife observations generate data that's stored in a database, and they link to your asset management systems like CityWorks or others, if you have those, or none at all. If you don't have an asset management system, then, and you don't have an intention to deploy one, the workforce tool also allows you to generate that data into a database that can be integrated into your enterprise system. So that's the real key there. Likewise, wildlife, I think the question also included wildlife, because it's a variation on a theme, but it's built on that same core technology. The data is formatted so that it is compliant with the wildlife observation expectations in Part 139, and it's stored in an enterprise database that you could share internally and then with the FAA as well. So, Terry, I'm not sure I covered all the questions. I want to make sure that, because there were quite a few components.
Yeah, so I think one important point is Survey 123 has very extensive report writing tools as well.
Good point. Yeah, you could take that data that you collected in Survey 123, and whether that's one observation or the entire list, and Survey 123 has a built-in capability to generate a report, and airports are using that survey to actually generate the reports automatically, and you can format those to be in any standardized form that you like. So including one that the FAA would agree that this is the form that we want it submitted like this. So it's an automated process that you configure inside Survey 123 to generate and then share those reports.
Hey, Terry, final point, if I could.
Yep.
So in our work with Tampa, the feedback we got from the operations staff at Tampa from their meeting with the FAA was that the FAA actually really liked the dashboard. And so Tampa granted the FAA inspector access to their dashboard. And he was performing some of his audit work just through using the dashboard to, research work had been completed and so on.
And if I'm not mistaken, you have also looked at, let's say if an airport is using another asset management solution or work order, that also the ability to link to pretty much any commercial off-the-shelf work order management solution. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so there's another question really having to do with what it really took to make the connection to CityWorks. So what was really required and how difficult?
Yeah, Mitch, you and I could probably share that answer. The first would be that that issue associated with that observation is unique. It has a unique identifier. And remember earlier I said there was a one-to-many relationship. So I conduct one observations and I could have many issues associated with that observation. So that observation has a unique identifier. And it's that unique identifier, its ID, that once I selected service request needed, it passes that identifier and all the associated information into CityWorks through a URL parameter. So it's a simple pass. And what we do is we configure that from the Esri side to the CityWorks side so that connects and passes that information automatically into CityWorks like you saw. And Mitch, you might want to join in on this now and talk about the receiving of that information on the CityWorks side.
Absolutely. So in this case, CityWorks has a lot of APIs or web services that can listen to this information. And so the mechanism is that Survey 123 webhook able to pass, you know, what those observations in the field are. And as Mike mentioned, you know, it's a one to many. And so each one of those observations will have its own service request created, and fields that will match up and otherwise. And so from that point, in CityWorks, it can be determined which type of work order is created and what work goes on from there.
All right, so there's another question, and it really is asking if the work order system could also function as a non-Part 139 inspection related request. So for example, to repair a leaking sink in the terminal.
Great question. Yeah, that's an excellent question. Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't just meet the needs of 139. You can use this form and a variation on it to do reporting of any issues, whether it's inside the terminal, on the air side, on the land side, or anything else associated with airport operations. So, and airports that may not even have a Part 139 requirement can use this tool to do their inspections, not for reporting purposes, but just for internal data collection and asset management as well. So great question.
Let's see, I guess this is, once, let's say in your use case on the lights, once the reinspection confirms that the lights have been repaired, is the NOTAM automatically canceled?
No, not in this workflow. We could work that, I assume, because you could generate the NOTAM automatically. There may be the possibility of doing that. So no, but I tell you what, that's a question I think I want to get back to you on. If you have that interest, maybe you could send me your contact info, and then we could talk about those details, and then I could post that online afterwards. But as far as I know, the automatic canceling of that NOTAM doesn't happen inside this workflow.
Okay. And let's see, I guess there's another question really more related to Nearmap. So how often are the aerial images updated from Nearmap?
Yeah, great question. Nearmap, as a business partner, goes out routinely with a fleet of aircraft, and they fly urban areas all the time. And typically, if it's an urban area, they're going to collect that information multiple times throughout the year. And they're not doing that because they've been tasked by a client to do that. They would fly, for example, the Tampa airport on a regular basis, maybe every quarter or even more often. And then that information sits inside a service that then you could subscribe to and include in your daily airfield inspection solution. So most of the areas where the airports occur are in heavily urbanized areas, so you can count on that imagery, that very, very high resolution imagery, being available multiple times throughout the year, and then historically as well. So you might have imagery that dates back to 2015 in some areas, all the way up through the currency that I showed you during the demo, which I think was collected in May.
Okay, let's see, another question, I guess really, you haven't created anything like this in Collector, right? So this is really in Survey 123, is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. However, because the data that is in a schema is in a database and in a web map, the thing that feeds the Collector app is a web map. So if you chose to use Collector as your method to collect information in the field, doing that is not a heavy lift. So the form that drives it is more map centric and it's pop-up based. But again, the data is already in a standardized schema with the drop downs and those already pre-configured. So being able to deploy it with Collector is an option. It's not the one I would recommend, but it's definitely an option. And the time to deploy, not that much.
Okay. Let's see, another question relating to the bird strike and the wildlife feature. Does that automatically make an update to the FAA's website, or in the workflow that you demonstrated, you toggle to the FAA website for reporting, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So in the form for the wildlife observation form, there was a hyperlink. So it's very similar to the link that is passed through that webhook. I just click the link to the report a bird strike or a wildlife observation, and then I'd have to enter my credentials, but it opens that website for that app automatically. Then that information would, then I'd have to populate it in. I suppose we could configure a connector to maybe populate more of that information like we're doing with CityWorks, but as it stands right now, the solution in the wildlife observations offers you a link, and then you enter in your credentials to that observation, the FAA's wildlife observation or bird strike, and then it populates that data because you enter it. So unlike a lot of the information in the reinspection where you saw that information pass directly into the form, you would manually enter in that bird strike information into the FAA's website.
Okay. Then there's sort of and we've mostly answered this. It's the person's saying they don't currently run CityWorks, but are there limitations on which asset management programs we're able to work with at Esri? And pretty much any asset management, work order management solution, the same workflow can be implemented as well. So the next question, can you select the asset from the map in Survey 123? So can you actually click, can you zoom in and then actually click on the asset itself to tag it in Survey 123?
Yeah, it's possible to do that. So if you had, say, your runway lights in your GIS and that information, like you saw, was available in that experience, then you could select from the map and it would push information about that asset into the form. So you could configure it that way.
Okay, and another question having to do with what report functionality is included. Is there sort of a canned report or what report functionality does this support?
Sure. The beauty of this is there's the ability within Survey 123 to generate a report that you could configure. So you could the output could be in a table, it could be in an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, or a PDF. And then you could take a template and you could custom build that template like I believe Tampa has done. And it populates it so that it looks like it has that look and feel that the FAA wants. So remember, the data that's in the survey becomes part of a table of records, which then you could use the reporting functionality inside Survey 123 or export that externally, and then you could do that outside of Survey 123 if you'd like. But eventually what would happen would be a easy to configure or customize report that could show up in a document, whether it's PDF, Word, or Excel.
Okay, and then there's a question relating how can we access the NOTAMs in disconnected mode?
Okay, you don't. Yeah, that's a website. So if you are disconnected, then you generate that NOTAM when you're back in the office or back when you're in a connected environment.
Okay. And let's see, would you consider this cost-effective resources for a GA Part 139 airport with a small operations crew?
I definitely would, and I think David mentioned it earlier. David, did you want to address that?
Yeah, so the field worker licensing price point here is $350 a year for one field worker. So this is a very low cost solution. So again, I think it's very cost effective using ArcGIS Online for that type of airport.
And to keep in mind, what we found is that the FAA, because they understand the solution, they have the technology as well. They are already, at least the regional flight standards district office where it's been deployed, has accepted this as sort of this de facto standard. And one thing that airports, hopefully none of the airports on this call have ever been through an audit where they failed, but these tools make this ability to report and then for auditing purposes much more efficient, so that you would not have as much fear about busting an audit or actually suffering any sort of penalty, whether it's financial or shutting down some of your operations. So that's part of the intention.
Okay. There's a sort of a unique question. Is it possible to, I guess this would be an additional configuration, but to an integration with sort of a takeoff and landing performance assessments, the TALPA requirements, the ability to integrate with TALPA at all?
You know, I would assume so. I'd like more information about that too. So the person who has that question, would you mind emailing David? I don't know if my email address came across in there. And then I'd like to have a breakout where you and I talk in detail about those standards.
Okay. Let's see. And I guess there's a question from a Maximo user and having to do with how difficult, how involved would it be to integrate with Maximo? And if I understand, I think you guys have actually have a Maximo integration as well. Is that the case?
Yes, we do. Yeah. I'm not really the person that can answer how difficult it is. No more difficult than it was with CityWorks, so relatively easy. And again, remember, we're not editing asset records in these asset management systems. We're just passing enough information to generate a work order. So the level of integration is fairly simple but effective.
Okay. And again, there's a question relating to obstacles and inspections of the obstacle clearance area.
Yeah, good. Although this tool is not specifically designed to do that, you can go out and collect information. For example, at the Tampa airport, like a lot of other airports, there was before COVID a lot of construction that was going on, which included temporary cranes that would go up and potentially enter into those protected surfaces. So you can report those inside this solution. However, we also have the ArcGIS for Aviation Airports extension, which is designed specifically to do that. So at your airport, you can generate these approach surfaces using the extension and then do any obstacle analysis against those surfaces to verify if there's any existing terrain or man-made features or trees that might violate or extend into that surface and how you might mitigate those. So that tool is very well suited for that need. The ArcGIS for Aviation Airports extension, and I can send you information on that. Again, if you want more information about it, please feel free to email us and we'll connect you with that information about the extension.
Okay. And then there's a question, can this airfield inspection format, could that be used for air traffic services facilities?
So not at an aerodrome, but say for regional air traffic control, is that what you're?
Yeah, for the facilities themselves. I believe Brandy actually answered that in fact they've already done that at Tampa as well.
There you go. Good.
So, okay, let's see. Is Survey 123 compatible with laser offset? So, for example, something like an Ike.
Yeah, we do have integration through Survey 123 where you could push information from a sensor like a laser if you were reading an offset, a distance, and an angle. So you can connect to some third-party hardware that would then push information about the location of whatever it is you're observing to the form.
All right, and let's see. This question, can we display role-based survey 123 questions in a single form?
So you've got one form, and then based on my credentials, I would either be able to see that question or not. I think that might be what you're asking. That's a darn good question. It may be the case that you could set up credentials in order to see certain parts of the form. So if I have one form that has everything in it, but based on my credentials, then I only see certain parts of that form, that's possible. Or that you log in, and then based on your login, you have access to a form that's built and suited and shared for that person with those. But yeah, Ishmael just hit me up on that and said, totally doable. So absolutely. And he is the king. As you can see right there, totally doable.
Very good, Ishmael.
I don't know.
So, all right. Well, unfortunately, I think we've run out of time for questions. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us. I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. As I said, we're very proud of the solution. We think that it represents a great solution for Part 139 airfield inspections. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining and hope that you'll join us for the next in our series of webinars for airports and for aviation. So thank you. Bye-bye.